Hi everyone, I'm Noeline Hammond-Jones. I'm the International Career Consultant at the University of Manchester. I just want to say and do a quick check. If you can put in the questions area that you can see my screen and that you can see our speakers and you can hear me, that would be absolutely fantastic. Just put yes in the questions area. Okay, fantastic. So we currently have 130 students online. Hi everyone, welcome. And that number is quickly going up. So what we're going to do in this morning's panel is I'm joined today by Kofi, Susanti, Maria and Raman. We're all located in various different places in the world today. And they're going to do a brief introduction for you of their backgrounds, and then we're going to get on to the questions area. And so if you do have a question today that you want to ask the panel, please post that in the questions area and we'll facilitate that for you. Okay, so if I can go and ask Kofi, could you please just give a brief introduction?
Okay. Hi everyone, good morning. Wherever you are, if it's in the afternoon, it's a beautiful morning here in the UK. My name is Kofi. I'm originally from Ghana. I'm a chartered accountant by profession and currently with the Warwick Business School. I'm happy to join you guys here today, and it will be my pleasure to share an insight on, the current happenings when it comes to, the COVID, the disruptions that has occurred in the world and the opportunities available, and how we can be optimistic going forward. I mean, there's always a silver lining under every unfortunate event, and I've lived through it. I've lived through financial crisis. I mean, I'm here to share any experience that you would like to know that can, give you confidence tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kofi. That was great. Maria?
So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the session this morning. It's great to be with you. I'm also in the UK. As you can see from my title, I actually work for KPMG China. I used to live and work in China and Hong Kong, and I used to run the graduate program across China and kind of within Hong Kong as well. And that was kind of several years ago. And what I've done since is I've moved back to the UK. It's where I'm from, as you can probably hear. And now I look after our overseas graduate intake. So at KPMG China, we take 1/3 of our intake every year from overseas universities like Manchester and Warwick, both top on our list. So now I'm obviously, when I'm physically allowed, I'm on campus a lot in the UK. I do a lot of assessments in the UK office, and I reach out virtually anyway. But for the last 3 years, my world has been quite virtual with Australia and the US and Canada. So it's a space that I'm really used to working in and happy to share any tips about that. I can also talk to you about obviously the selection processes and things to look out for, tips to look out for. And if you're interested in being successful in virtual interviews, which is obviously a very current topic, I'm happy to talk about that. So fire away your questions and we'll do our best.
Thank you. Susanti?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Susanti. I'm Indonesian. I'm currently based in Singapore, so I think it's afternoon over here. Thanks for joining us. A little bit of my background. I'm actually has been in the HR, I would say, role for the past 10 years. I started as a small boutique recruitment firm doing headhunting for oil and gas industry. And then right now, my role for the past 3 years has been the recruitment for Shopee. Maybe some of you might not heard about Shopee. We are an e-commerce company that is present in Southeast Asia. So if you do have any questions about our businesses, our recruitment practices, feel free to ask me. Yeah, and I think just to chime in on what Maria said, understand that most of you are students or perhaps looking for a new career opportunity outside the countries that you are at right now. Feel free to shoot me any questions if you do have about Shopee, Southeast Asia, or regardless, I'll try my best to answer. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Raman?
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Raman Talwar. I'm the CEO at Similanis. We are an India-based company working across in a novel tech area called extended reality. So in terms of my background, I graduated from the University of Manchester in 2011. I did a MN's course in chemical engineering. I worked in the UK for about 2 years after my studies, particularly in the pharmaceutical FMCG sector. So I was able to kind of find recruitment there, and of course was able to kind of work for some time and studied, how it was to work in that environment. Came back to India, started working for a few companies here, and then eventually started my company, which is Similanis. Very happy to share my views on how the journey went for me from studying in the UK and working in the UK to finally coming back and starting again. So happy to share my views and eager to, of course, answer your questions.
Thank you, Raman. Okay, so that is our panel, and you can see from the slide, which I'll leave up. I was going to change the slide, but what I'll do is, so this is the any question stage now that our panel has gotten to. So I'm going to leave this slide up with the panel so that you can see who they are, and so you can either put a question, a general question to the panel, or you can specifically ask one of our panel members a question if you wish. The first question I'm going to ask is, so based on the current climate, I know some students are worried that coming back to online education for semester 1 might impact their employability. As employers and working in your various different sectors, do you see online study having a negative, positive, or what kind of effect do you think it will have, and how will employers see that going forward?
Shall I start with that one? So basically, I wouldn't worry about online learning at all. It's the way it's all gone. I think if you'd asked me this question kind of February time, I might have been quite nervous about answering honestly and reassuring you, but I can give you 100% reassurance that the world has gone virtual at the moment, and it's working for me, it's working for my kids, it's working for businesses. I think we've all surpassed expectations in what we can achieve virtually. And to be honest, what's the difference between learning an online lecture and a face-to-face lecture? You can still ask questions, you still have a relationship with your tutor. I've got my kid in the next door now on Microsoft Teams learning about the Tudor history. Now, what's the difference between learning that on a PowerPoint with the teacher speaking over than the teacher standing in the classroom? Of course, building rapport is important. But I think we've surpassed all our expectations. I even think that companies will seriously review their premises budgets after this. Do they really need them all in? My husband works for UBS in London. They spend a fortune on premises within kind of the city of London and over in kind of the posher area of London with private clients. I think they can halve that now, or at least have half the workforce in and half out. So I think you mustn't worry about being disadvantaged at all in an online scenario.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think what I will add to Maria is that I mean, this is a new skill going forward. Employers will require of especially, I mean, graduates who are coming from these schools. And one thing as part of my career I experienced is that when you work in offline, I worked as an accountant, I worked as an auditor, and in that space you are always not in the office, but you need to communicate back to your supervisors, you need to communicate back to your line managers and stuff. And how are you doing these things? It was virtually done, right? So right now the world is giving us an opportunity for everybody to acquire these skills, and it is the free for all. I mean, there's always a silver lining from whatever every crisis brings. It is an era of learning new skills, and as soon as people adapt to it and be flexible and be agile in their way of doing things, that is only going to be, the cutting edge. Imagine after this whole crisis, some people will come up with certain skills, right? And Virtual working and, remote working is going to be part of our daily lives. I mean, even if we get the opportunity to still go back to the office, it wouldn't be the same. Some people will be working offline. Now it opens the world up. It tells you that you can find opportunities everywhere because people have already invested in virtual offices. So now I don't need, if after school and I still want to live in Ghana and work in the UK, it shouldn't be a problem for me to relocate to the UK before I can work with a UK company. I can still find a job here. The only thing is that you negotiate, I'm going to live in Ghana and work with you. Okay.
Yep.
And platforms and technology is giving us this opportunity. And I think learning virtually is a way for you to adapt your life and improve and be comfortable and be accustomed to it. So by the time you are done with school, and that is what the work environment demand, you don't need to learn it again. You already have that skill. You can already form teams. You can already work with teams. You can beat deadlines, everything. You understand? And it improve ourselves. I mean, when we go to work, we are the one thing that every employer will ask is that, are you a team player? Can you work under less supervision? And this is the time for us to, be able to develop all these skills. How do you develop skill and build a team around people when you don't see them? And this is all going to be, a thing in tomorrow. It is not going to be a special skill anymore that some people have, more sort of a competitive advantage over certain people. But right now, it's going to be free for everybody. So I think, people should be upbeat about it. People should be proud about it. People should be happy about it, and they should embrace.
Well, thank you, Kofi. Suzanne Rahman, would you like to add anything?
Yep. If I can go first. Sorry.
Yeah,
Raman, you can go first.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, I was hearing the conversation. I could not really stop myself. I was too eager to answer. Really sorry for that. But I think the COVID-19 situation, definitely, I have so many views around it, especially coming from a business, like kind of starting a business, which is all about, in essence, how people could do remotely and how we could simulate the real world and do it all virtually. So it's of course happy days for us right now. But shouldn't say that. But the way I see it is that this entire situation of pandemic has really put forward a lot of questions. I think those questions are that for businesses, especially small businesses or even large ones, the question was that that meeting which required an early morning flight to be taken, well, that could have happened over a Zoom call, for example. So these are some of the questions which businesses are now really answering and taking on, and especially like following on from what Maria also said in terms of large scale spaces, posh buildings and all those things. I think those concepts are going to change, especially because of this situation. The other question which I wanted to pose also was, of course, from the education institute as well as the university side of it. If you look at it, education, of course, degree education is very important. Absolutely, I would not substitute mine for anything else. But I think given the way the things are kind of evolving, people will start to challenge that as well, because they would not have that much money to spend on, for that matter, on education. So I think micro learning, skilling platforms, edtech platforms, which are allowing you to skill yourself. And at the same time, of course, if universities are also shifting slowly on the online mode and offering virtual degrees, I think that could be a step forward. So definitely the nature of skills which we are taking on has to change, and that will see a major change. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle, I talked about businesses, I talked about education. The thing which I really feel strongly about when it comes to employment is, that's something which we are practicing as well ourselves, is that how we could make everything so micro that people could have the abilities to, let's say, work on many assignments at once. And I believe if you cut out the travel time and all the other times which people end up spending on normally, which used to happen earlier, they could not find time to do pretty much anything else. But I feel now, with so much time at our hands, of course, at our disposal, if the time is managed well, people can take on consulting jobs and roles and take on many different technical challenging areas, which probably would have been a difficult thing to manage in the past. So I think these are some of the three thoughts which I just wanted to share from my side, which is to summarize, businesses going virtual, education getting virtual, and jobs getting virtual. So I think that's a healthy situation to think of, really, and that's the summary for myself.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Susanti, have you anything to add?
Well, I think the other panelists actually has covered it pretty well. But I do see I do see where there are some concerns coming from students when it comes to e-learning, right? My suggestion is that for the students, be proactive. I think regardless whether it's actually offline or online, when it comes to learning, when you are actually in schools or moving to studying, like when you are in the learning mode, I think try as much as possible to to have a more proactive approach in understanding the concept or the context of what you're learning, because definitely I'm not going to deny that e-learning or learning online or attending courses online there are some certain limitation. So be proactive in absorbing all the courses that you're actually learning, and be flexible and adaptable to the current situation, just like what Raman actually mentioned. Be embracing it in a positive notes, and not to worry too much on it. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you for that. So we do see, and we do see that having that online education is not a disadvantage at all. In fact, it's demonstrating various skill set in digital, being flexible, adaptable. Do we all agree that the world of work is going to change as a result of this? And what can you see happening? Or not that you're all psychic, and I'm not expecting you to kind of know, but from your own personal perspective, what do you see changing in the next 2 to 3 years in terms of graduate recruitment, the kinds of roles that might be established? I know Kofi mentioned being able to work anywhere in the world from your home country, because I think, and this might just be me, but I do think that this situation, as horrible as it is, it has shown employers who may have been reluctant in remote working that it can work. So I think it's opened up a whole area for employers that they've not really considered or been a bit skeptical or nervous about. So how do you see things changing over the next 2 to 3 years? I'm going to go to Susanti first because she was last time. And sorry, Susanti, I'm putting you on the spot there.
Yeah, I was like thinking, and I was like, oh, how will that change? I wouldn't say that I'm able to answer it and foresee what's down the road in the future, but then I can just share a little bit in terms of what Shopee did in adapting into this whole COVID situation. I think in terms of the profiles of the employees that we are looking for, it still remains the same. But I think the border control, it's like when you're talking about Singapore and when you're talking about where Shopee at right now, the border are pretty much close to closing their income of overseas people. So with that being said, as a company, we goes beyond to be more on the creative side in enabling us to still hire people across the regions. So for example, in Singapore, we do hire people from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Vietnam for our Singapore office, but we come up with a more creative solution on how they can still going forward with their work for our Singapore office, but then at the same time, still physically back in their home country because of the border. And of course, there is red tapes in terms of employment, contracts, everything that we do discuss with our legal team. And I think we kind of adapt into that. And that's one. I think that's one thing changes that I experience as a company. I think secondly is more towards how the company actually adapting into this whole working from home situation. I think in practice, I think if most of you are aware about Southeast Asia, I think we tend to be stereotyping to become to be the hardworking workaholic, I think you can call it. And I think back then for Shopee, we don't really allow working from home for our staff because we do believe in synergy that is created from collaborating in the office space. We have like hundreds meetings room available for our staff. But then with these changes, we have been working from home for the past 2 months, I would say. Mm-hmm. And it's productivity, I think, still going well. And I think that's one thing that our management is actually thinking about adapting into, hey, working remotely or working from home could be one of the solution to increase productivity of the staff. So yeah, but in terms of job hunting, I think for students right now who are actually worried about job hunting. One thing that I can share is that Shopee is still hiring. Our hiring target is still the same. If we are reflecting back then, first half of the year of 2019 to this year itself, our numbers of hiring is still the same. So we are still hiring aggressively, and yeah, and I think that's hopefully what I can share from my point of view. I think the rest can also chip in on their experience.
Brilliant. And Raman, what's your take on the changing market of what you see happening in the next 2 to 3 years?
So I think in terms of the markets, I can give an India perspective. I'm sure people on the call and the webinar might be, of course, viewing the news. There are sectors which have been hardly hit. Travel, tourism, hospitality, yes, it's been badly hit. But I see on the upside certain sectors such as e-commerce, healthcare, domains like telecom. I think they have seen an upshift. We're looking at very unconventional markets rising. Of course, when you look at the entire insurance industry, the entire play around, giving affordable healthcare, medical advice and stuff like that. I think that's on the rise everywhere. So I think that's a good sector to be in, because until the vaccine comes out, these elements and areas and industries will still see relevance. Now, the other area which I'm seeing a lot of action is definitely education technology, edtech, and that is slowly kind of transforming into more of an online consulting era as well. So you see a lot of companies now trying to go online and consult and doing that, offering that. Like, of course, as you also might have seen, there has been a deluge of webinars which have come through ever since the lockdown period started, because people are sitting at home. I think they have times at their hands, so they can really consult and deliver that knowledge and training. In terms of the SMEs in India, they are very hard hit. There was a survey recently done where I could share my presentation, of course, if time permits. 67% of them are actually thinking of shutting businesses, which is quite a damning statistic. But the point is that the silver lining to all of this is that they are adapting to new ways to cut costs. They're trying to do more with less. I think that's where automation and technology comes into it. So I see automation becoming quite significant. There's a rise of artificial intelligence. There's a rise of ensuring that more people could be working from home. How we could make the remote systems work well. Recently, the Indian government launched a challenge, a nationwide challenge for companies to come up with novel solutions to address video conferencing. So you see, I would say a lot of action is now shifting to tech, and I think that's the way forward, especially in a post-COVID world, where it's a new normal now, which we have to adjust. The new normal, the basics of the new normal is that we've got to be adjusting to the fact that we might not even see people for a long period of time, even after lockdowns are lifted. So I think adjusting to that new normal, for that, the online systems have to be more safer, secure. So security. Cyber security is one area, which is a huge area now. I think there's a lot of data being exchanged online. So I see a lot of potential in that sector space. And I'm already seeing so many companies coming to the fore. Automation companies which are automating your processes, be it your manufacturing processes or your HR processes. You talk about an area called robotic process automation, or the RPA. That's seeing a very tremendous upshift. So that definitely, these are some of the areas. I think India has been blessed with at least a good tech kind of an interface now, especially with the governments also lauding all the tech initiatives which are taking place. So I believe it's the right time to be launching a tech venture in India, and to be really supporting the industries, because that's what the Indian government is calling out for. They're all very vocal for local, as they call it, which is about being self-dependent, which is about being not relying on anybody else, not relying on global economies, not relying on anybody else, in fact, for that matter. So the start to being self-reliant starts from you doing something on your own, I think, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurial as well as a lot of self-dependency kind of starts to the ideas start to take shape, and that's where the government has been very keen to push. They have launched a few initiatives and incentives for MSMEs. They have launched a few packages which have been very promising. They definitely make it easy for you to start up. I think everything is now shifting more on the online way. Payments, e-commerce, they're already done a fairly good job in terms of adapting. Everything is now cashless. Everything is contactless. Every experience which we have, I'm absolutely amazed to see, and I think that's one thing which I can tell what's happening on the ground in India. The concept of social distancing, of course, I would say from an Indian perspective, it was very much a very difficult one to even believe. But I believe I see things happening on the ground, and I'm so impressed that even the average person out here is actually taking that very seriously. And the focus on health and safety, all of a sudden, I think I could not even imagine, people who are making manufacturing pipes are manufacturing now anything under the sun which could help with COVID-19 preparedness, masks, face shields, innovative ventilators, and so on and so forth. And this entire ecosystem has opened up in such a great way that you see all of the industry players really coming together to support. That's never been even seen before, I would say. So I think going by the times, that's what the trends are. So tech, I would say, to summarize, is the way forward, and anything to do which can really help the people around us preparing for COVID-19 aftermath is what I would say is also kind of pretty ripe right now.
Yeah, and I just want to add, for those of you who are engineers, I know we've got a few engineers on today, Ram, and you don't have to work in the built environment in engineering. So your talent and your skills, and if you go to, you can see on the screen the link to Raman's company. You can have a look and see what he does. But yeah, there are other opportunities out there, so you can move to other areas if that's what you want to do, and you still use your skill set in doing that. So I'm going to move to Kofi. Kofi, what do you see happening in your opinion in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe around banking, finance, that kind of thing?
I think I would relate it to the 2018 financial crisis, because I'm more familiar to it because that was when I had also graduated. And one thing I know is that not all companies will survive, but industries will survive. I mean, industries will come up with new jobs. There will be new roles. Okay. So how do you position yourself? How do you see it? Do you target a company rather than industry? And I think there's a time when people should start looking at industry wide. And I always say that, I mean, when you look at 2018, when you look at 2008 down to 2015, all these financial crises, what it teaches us is that definitely there will be always time for rebuild. And as much as we know what happens in rebuild, there will be some downsides, right? But then it comes up with a boom. So more people will be needed to rebuild industries, but on a different skill set. It wouldn't be the same thing. So that is how people should see it. That is how people should target themselves. What would the world economies require? The financial sector will still be there. I work in a financial economy, and I realized that anytime there are crises, it comes up with new challenges. And the more challenges that it comes, it requires new way of thinking. It requires new solutions. And you realize that if one job was lost, it comes with about 2 or 3 new roles. Because in the short run, companies will be looking out for people that can help them to come out of crisis. And in the long run, the opportunities and the lessons that are learned will come up with new way of doing things. So if I think of, let's say, an industry like the tourism industry, okay, where they are the music economy, they are the travel economy. I mean, you should know that this is a time where customer service, people's confidence will be required for them to, come out to build these economies again. So if you are someone who has a background in tourism, what new skill set would you require? You need to start thinking of safety. So you develop skills in tourism safety. You develop, you put technology together. You put the tech economy and tourism together, and you know that you should be building skills in tourism tech. So when it comes to reaching out to clients, instead of you going to parks, you know, distributing flyers or attracting people to some of these areas, you realize that you need to do these things virtually. And how are you leveraging on your social skill? Maybe you are vibrant on social media. How can you sell these small capital, social capital that you have to such economies in order to help them come out of these things? These are skills that will be required. If you think that you are an accountant or you have an accounting background and you think of how our company is going to, you should realize that a lot of companies are behind schedule in preparing their accounts because of all these things. How do you go in there? You need to go in there with different skill sets. They need to be interpreting data. Are you a good analytic? Can you process data in speed time? So you need to build. So you have the whole industry will be there. It will require new skill set to solve solutions. I remember when I came out of school, truly I wanted to be an accountant so bad, right? To the point that I didn't think that a small company will hire somebody to come and do internal auditing. But what I realized was that there was small companies that require help, that require people to do certain things. And that is where I found my new job, right? I had to adapt to it. This is a time when people need to be more agile in their thinking.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, what I would say is that jobs, well, will definitely go away, but industry will come up with new set of problems. And these new set of problems will require new set of skill, new set of thinking. So you think of, I mean, if let's say someone who my earlier example, you so bad want to be in the tourism industry, you so bad possibly want to go to the music industry. But meanwhile, I mean, when we look at our current generation, there are a lot of people, familiar with social media, right? Can you be a social media account manager because you understand the tourism industry? Doesn't necessarily mean that you should be stagnant, right? Can you manage somebody who is already in the tourism industry, their social media account? So you are operating in this, you are still operating in the tourism industry, but in a different role.
Different capacity. Yeah.
So that is how, I mean, when you look at the world economy, how it is changing and the kind of new jobs that will be coming. This is how I want people to be thinking. Thank you.
Thanks, Kofi. Maria, anything to add?
Sure. Well, the first thing you mentioned about Nolene was, what kind of changes will there be to work? And I think, I mean, I'm a living, breathing example of how you can work remotely. I've been doing this job for 5 years. I sit here in the UK and I work for KPMG China. I work on virtual teams all the time. In fact, even during a lapse in the Hong Kong desk where we had one manager leave before another one started, I was able to run the Hong Kong team from here. So really, in terms of changes to work, yes, more virtual, but once the economy has recovered, everyone will still need auditors and there'll still be the same amount of jobs. They may be a different shape and they may take a different daily duties or daily location. Might just mean that employers have a pick of a more global market if they're willing to employ, if they're sitting in China and willing to employ somebody in the UK or South Africa or wherever it might be. So I think there will be changes to work. There'll be more global teams, but I think essentially the same amount of work will be there. And in terms of graduate recruitment, which I know is obviously a big worry, again, it is going to be quieter this year. There won't be probably quite so many opportunities available, but as I've just said, there still will be opportunities. We still need auditors, whether businesses are thriving or going under, they still need an auditor. They still need risk managers, they still need internal auditors. So I think in the graduate selection process, let's think about core competencies of a big firm like KPMG or the other big four or the big banks and how they hire. So what are the core competencies that we assess in graduate recruitment? Tech savvy, innovation, communication, collaboration. All of these things are still relevant whether you work from home or whether you work physically in the office. So I think probably the assessment might change slightly. A shift to online could be an advantage for you as overseas students returning back to wherever you're from, that you can actually still carry out that assessment. When I started this job 5 years ago, if the students from the UK, Australia, Canada couldn't get back to Hong Kong or China for their assessment in December, then they missed the boat completely. So it actually could open doors in terms of where you can apply for and your virtual assessments. And I think the competency framework will essentially stay the same in terms of what's being assessed.
Okay, fantastic. I just want to as well reassure students at the moment, the graduate market has slowed down. We have to accept that, but we've only seen a 12% drop in the number of jobs, which I know overall that's still a lot of jobs, but it's not as bad as the non-graduate market. So we are still seeing movement, and a lot of companies that we've been speaking to have, that if they've offered, they will honor that agreement. So at the moment for the graduate market, there has been a bit of a slowdown, but it's not a massive drop. And as our panelists have said, we're going to see a change in the market. It's understanding, as Kofi mentioned, what are your skill sets now? How are those skills transferable to other roles? Are there things that you're doing in your spare time that can be used in a professional capacity, and obviously being digitally minded, and going on to that, this is mainly, I know you've mentioned some of them around the competency framework, Maria, but students want to know how at this time can they stand out for recruiters. What can they do to demonstrate their skills, and what can they be doing right now to stand out essentially from what is going to be, as I think we all agree, a more competitive market?
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing to bear in mind is whether you're doing it virtually or you're physically in the country that you're applying for, the first 2 or 3 stages of most graduate processes are going to remain unchanged. So you've got your online application, which you always needed to stand out in before anyway, because that's how you get selected. Then usually there's some kind of online game or online aptitude test. Same, that's not going to change. You always do that remotely. The next stage is usually some kind of maybe a video interview or some kind of video presentation. That's not going to change. So you're actually going to get quite a far through where you could, where you're exactly the same as you were before. Then later, of course, you've got the question, well, am I going to be going for an assessment centre physically, or am I going to be doing an online one? So I think the latter is probably what concerns you the most, because the former is what you would have done anyway. So how you stand out virtually is probably to get lots of practice virtually. I know there's more and more virtual internships available now. Absolutely brilliant. Such a good way to practice how you could be working, and getting your Skype, honing your Skype into, I always say Skype interviews. I don't know why. I know there's a million different providers, but honing your virtual interview skills, really good thing to do. Lots of, I'll be running workshops for all of you guys, open to all of you guys, for how to be successful in virtual interviews, virtual group discussion exercises. So that really, you haven't got to panic any more about standing out in this market than you would have done standing out in any market. All of our, as I say, our core competencies won't change. Our whole assessment form of how we assess graduates and how each assessment for each competency won't change because it goes online. So you haven't got to worry any more than you did before. I know one of the key things that Nolene mentioned before we came online was that you're worrying about the experience, getting the internship or getting the kind of industry experience throughout your degree. Well, there's 2 things to that. You may still be able to do that, and there will be some virtual internship programs on offer, which might make it easier for you. A lot of students from the UK, for example, can't get back to China for our internship in the winter, in January, for the audit peak season, because it clashes with their timetable. So in fact, it might make it more flexible, and you can get experience in other ways as well than an internship. Now, if you've done an internship and I'm interviewing you, I'd love to hear about what you learned from that internship, what skills you think you gained, what things you had to overcome. But that's not to say that I wouldn't be just as interested if you trained for a marathon and how you overcame the issues, if you've got experience in working with different cultures and how you might have struggled with that and how you overcame it. Doesn't have to be an internship experience that you draw from. And most big graduate programs, especially within professional services, don't expect you to have loads of internship experience, so try not to panic about that.
Thanks, Maria. Susanti, have you anything to add?
Well, I think I'm just following up with what Raman has said in terms of the industry that is booming because of the COVID, right? Which is the tech firm, which is the tech startup. I think when it comes to tech, because I've been recruiting for the companies for the past 3 years or so, I think we are fairly a new industry. I think surprisingly, when we look at talents, maybe something that some of the students want to adjust into in terms of the skills. Do acquire your own self-learning on Python, SQL, or those kind of data skill set that will be equip you better when you want to go into this industry. I can speak mainly. I think I do agree with Maria. I think our assessment as a recruiters for the candidates profile that comes to our table is not going to change despite of the COVID situation. We still look at your internship experience, your learning kind of like attitude as a fresh graduates, right? But if you want to focus more on diverting from what you studied to an industry that Raman said, is gonna be a potential market after the COVID, which is the tech industry. I think to acquire those data skills will be necessary. And I would really encourage everyone who actually tuning today to kind of like exploring self-learning courses on SQL, Python, JavaScript, etc., etc. I think that will be really, really helpful to stand up their applications to company like Shopee or e-commerce or tech startup. Yeah.
And just to add to that as well, I mean, if you're doing any kind of programming as a hobby as well, and you're on platforms and forums and things like GitHub, these are things as well employers want to see, because having those minimal tech, it doesn't even have to be a massive, being able to completely write 3 or 4 computer languages, but having some tech skills, especially now, outside of the social media platform, is something that can be an advantage to you. Yeah. Raman, I just wanted to go to you for the go ahead.
I was going to say, add to your point when you said about GitHub. Really, I think there are a few platforms where you could do a lot of hackathons online. So like you said, if the students have practiced a skill on computer language, it'll make sense for them to build something which could help to automate something or help a potential like business owner, a small business owner. And the pricing, of course, could be decided by themselves and keeping it affordable so that people can use it. So yes, testing your skills out, hackathons, and building things up on GitHub, making things open source. I think some fantastic ways to go about it. Yeah, just wanted to add to that. Really.
And just adding there as well around experience. I know, Maria, you mentioned getting experience. That's not all about the internships. Do any of you have any insights into how students can gain experience or the types of various experiences that you've seen or heard from colleagues or networks that you've not heard of before, such as online projects or things like that? Who wants to take that one?
I can. Yeah, please go ahead, Kofi.
I think something I can add to that is that, I mean, as the discussion goes, the message here is that students should be proactive and be agile, right? Mm-hmm. So can you identify, volunteering work in your communities? What skill do you have? Would they require your skill? Go in there, offer your service for free, do things for people. Okay. When you enter into a volunteering or a social small company, they are operating like a business. Okay. The changes you make in there becomes your laurels. You go anywhere with that. So if I do that a lot. I mean, I've been practicing as an auditor, full-time job before I came to MBA. Most of the things I do with my off time or with my free time is to consulting for small companies, right? And some of them I do for them for free. When I started, I was doing it for them for free. Okay. And that is how I built my financial and accounting skills. Okay, because I mean I couldn't have done that on my full-time job, but I needed to do something else. Before, I mean, after 2008, when I came out of school, right, I didn't have any experience. I had to go to small businesses way back in Ghana and say, hey, you know what? I'm an accounting graduate. I mean, what do you have any problems with your bookkeeping that I can help you with? I was doing that for people. I was doing that for my local assembly office. I go in there, I keep records of their daily transactions. So people can think of doing that, doing
That
offering
would
their
help
service.
SMEs, I think, especially now with that sector really struggling. A lot of those companies may need individuals with skill sets that they either can't access or haven't thought maybe of accessing, so aren't familiar with. So putting yourself out there really is
Yeah.
valuable. Shows initiative and problem solving as well, I think, being offering your talents. Raman, can I just ask you, what have you seen or what have you heard? Because I know that you're like India is very networked as a country, and who you know is as important as what you know. So what are you hearing in your networks around graduates availing of opportunities?
So I'll talk about that in two perspectives. One is what we are doing and what the market around I've seen doing. So I'll talk about ourselves. I think so. I have a few people in my network as well, people who know us, people who worked with us in the past and who are not no longer working with us. So like normally a journey, like Kofi also said, when you are a student and when you're a graduate, um, the real thing here is to what value you can add to the table. So whatever volunteering, like Kofi also mentioned, doing bookkeeping for companies which need it. So what I've been doing is I've been like those people have been reaching out to me themselves and asking whether we need any strategic intervention from them, especially because when they left us, their skill sets now are a bit better than what they were earlier, especially with the addition of few degrees and MBAs and so on and so forth. So when I started discussing that, then I realized that not only could that work for one person, but then you build a network effect. So that one person talks to 10 other people, and then those 10 people speak to other people, and then the whole ecosystem gets built around it. I've had in a matter of days, I've had probably 5 or 6 MBAs literally helping me out with the new strategies we're trying to launch. And that is again just to help us prepare for a post-COVID world, which is going to be quite a ruthless one for everyone. So I think that has really helped us from our perspective. And what I've also told many people is that, of course, like Kofi also mentioned, volunteering is a big word, and when you talk about your vision as a company, which ours is, that we are a socially conscious company, and we tell them that we are doing it for the impact at the end of it. And if somebody wants to marry that vision with their vision by saying that, what, we're associated with an impact oriented mission, then that makes sense for them, and that kind of adds more value to what they're doing. So that's one part. And then I've also seen a lot of people coming up to us and saying that we want to do free pilots with you. They built out some very cool tech and they want to do a lot of pilots with us. And that's something which I believe is a great way to do. I can see Susanti also kind of responding positively to that. So I think a lot of tech companies like us get benefited by a lot of other companies giving us free pilots to use and consume. Now that's a great value add which people can do, and that's happening for us really. And I think a lot of people have done that. And the way we do it is we democratize it. How do we do that? We open it up as a platform for other people to contribute and come up and really add value together. So that's how the community builds, and that's how you leverage the power of everyone coming together and adding value. So that's one perspective from our side. Then the other perspective of what I've heard is other companies trying to do is they've really thrown out in open a lot of digital marketing assignments I've seen to a lot of people out there on a freelance basis, and that has really got a lot of strong kind of attraction. I've seen so many individuals literally coming on as a freelance and trying to support the digital marketing initiatives, because I think when in a pandemic situation, when you think that there is no use of or no role for marketing, that is when you realize that is actually the time when you should market the most. so that you're
Yeah.
always in the faces of people, that they know that you are there. Sometimes it just helps to just say hi to someone and just say that, you know, that you're there, so that when the time of need comes around, they know that you're there and they can follow back upon it. So I think that bit of cognitive recall is quite important in this day and age. So I think the message for the students could be that what I've also seen people doing is that they're just making their presence felt, even though it's a hard situation out there. So if you could simply, and there are ways to automate that. There are a lot of platforms in which they can sequence emails in an AI fashion, which can simply hit emails out one after the other, like every 10 days or something, that, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm up to, new skills I've added. So that can really help out and work out for students, so that eventually when the market does open up, or for that matter, if they have something entrepreneurial up their sleeves, they could find customers and traction for it. So these are the two perspectives I want to share.
Thank you. And I think in summary as well, just to add that it's not really just relying on the advertised vacancies. I think it's really putting yourself out there and volunteering for a charity, or whether it's an organization in your local community who might need help. You know, it could be a restaurant in your local village that might need help with marketing, or, you know, increasing its reach online on social media, things like that, where they've not had to do that before. So so we've got about 8 minutes left. So I just want to get your final thoughts, top tips for graduates, top tips even for, because I know not everyone online is graduate, but maybe around internships or experience that we've not already mentioned. So I'm going to go to Susanti first. If you could just give me a couple of quick roundup, your top tips.
Oh, top tips. There's a lot of tips that we can give to the students. Well, I think what works for me and even my team is actually LinkedIn platform. I think that's commonly well known among, you know, wherever you are. I think LinkedIn is a good platform for you to network and to kind of like reach out to respective recruiters in the company, in the countries that you want to explore the opportunities with. And that's what works for us, because I think for our team, we are very big on LinkedIn. We use LinkedIn as a platform, not just to post our jobs, but also to network and to find suitable candidates, individuals for our openings. So a quick tips in this situation when you're actually looking to looking to network quickly to find people that can open up doors for opportunity in the countries that you want to, or in the industry that you want to. Do your own due diligence. Do your own due diligence in terms of the companies, the recruiters that exist. Reach out to them on LinkedIn, send them messages, which I think is an old trick, but I think it works. It still works until now for me as a recruiters. Reach out to them, send your resumes, and I think the moment it's there, I think the recruiters definitely, for companies that's hiring, I think definitely they will help you to connect you to the right recruiters or the right person to talk about the opportunity. So I think be proactive on that way, and I think that will help to secure an opportunity. Yeah, I think that's for me.
Thank you. Maria?
I think the first thing to realize is that just because everything's shifted to this virtual scenario doesn't mean that you can't be yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to change who you are or how you think you would come across in a selection process. All of my fellow panelists here today have given us a bit of insight into their personal lives, their personal businesses, how they've coped with challenges. Should be just as natural if you're speaking to someone in an online virtual interview as if you were face to face. Okay, so that's it. Try to be yourself. Don't panic about the situation and the changing situation, because we're all in the same situation. Companies are learning, you're learning, and we will find a way together to make these assessments work, to make graduate selection work. Nothing will stop. The world won't stop turning. So just try not to panic about it, I think is my key message.
Oh, thank you. Kofi?
I'll just leave them with some few messages about 3 points. I mean, first of all, know that as a graduate, your first full-time job you're gonna get is looking for a job. So you have to manage it as a full-time job. And in doing that, you need to plan. I mean, plan, and in your planning, be adaptive and be flexible. Look out to a wider market. Don't just only look for advertised job. Go to the hidden market, approach people, tap into your network, build your value proposition. identify new current problems, develop skill sets in it, know how you are going to tell employers how you propose to solve these, to help them solve these problems. So that would be your value proposition. Leverage on your social capital. I mean, tap into your alumni, your LinkedIn, as Susanti said, your social media, leverage on it, because that will be your key to unlocking opportunities.
Thank you. And Raman?
Right. So my messages would be quite simple, really. I think the first one being that, along with the framework, like Kofi also mentioned, I think agility is very important. So you got to be very quick to gain new skills. You got to be fairly adaptable. So technology will be ever important. So you need to be adapting to the changing technologies. And alignment is quite important as well, that because when things change very frequently, then you need to be aligned with what you're trying to do as your objective. I would say just stay confident, learn everything online. I think there is a lot of potential for new skills to be gained. You have a lot of time at hand. I think that could be utilized fairly well. And also to think out of the box. I think when you're putting down those skills on your CV, I would rather say that back them up with a bit of a practical example and how that could be used for a small business or a large company in a better way. You got to practice your digital skills and become very good at social media. You got to build your own personal brand on social media, like Susanti and Kofi have also mentioned. You got to network really well. And finally, don't stress. Everyone is in the same boat. So this so shall pass.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. I wanted to just a couple of questions that have come in. Maria is going to do a session for us that we're arranging at the moment for Warwick and Manchester students on virtual interviews and assessments. So once we have that, you will be contacted. So don't worry, we'll let you know when that's going to be scheduled. Shopee are still recruiting. KPMG is still recruiting. So you can go on the websites and have a look. I wanted as well to reassure students that use your career service. We're still operating. We're remotely working in what is my box room. We're still doing guidance appointments. You know, for LinkedIn, I just want to say that we've done quite a few LinkedIn sessions recently. You can find resources on your career service website. University of Manchester has a YouTube channel. You can go on that. There's no login, and you can see our LinkedIn webinars there that we did the last couple of weeks on how to get your profile updated and that. But use your networks, as Kofi said. Alumni, you know, they're in companies right now. Don't just rely on advertised vacancies. Tap into the hidden job market. Reach out to employers, no matter how big or small. Don't be too fixed on brands as well. Think broader, as Kofi said. You know, think about companies rather than a sector. So don't just concentrate on a specific sector. Think more broadly about companies. You know, every company needs an accountant, no matter which sector. So you know, it's those kinds of things. And also, if you are struggling and you're finding this overwhelming, as many people are, or you have had a situation where, you know, you've lost a position or you don't know where to go, contact your career service, reach out, and we'll have a conversation with you and help you as best you can. So thank you so much to our panelists today. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your insights, and just taking the time out of your, I know, very busy schedules to speak to us today. So thank you so much. And just to let everybody know, in the handout section, you can actually download a PDF of the panelists' backgrounds as well. So I'm sure you're going to get plenty of LinkedIn requests. So thank you so much. We appreciate you attending today.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.